Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance Assemble. Volume 232. And you're back, Brent.
Yes, I'm back from my work trip. It went well. Thank you, Mr. Hines, for filling in last week. I did watch Agatha last week, and I believe I texted you. You know,
Did you? I forget. Did you wait a day, or did you do it the same night?
No. I watched it that night. We were at like a party, basically hosted by the conference, and as soon as I got back to my hotel room, I took a shower and then I promptly watched it, and I enjoyed it. And maybe we'll touch on this again, but I'll go ahead and assume if you're listening to this one, you saw last week's. I enjoy the show. They need to move away from the trials of being inside a house. I'm like I could already tell last week, like, oh, 2 houses in a row. So we'll see what the next episode brings. Well, we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's been this week I've been single dad until this morning. Erin's been out of town on her work trip in Arizona, so she's gone from relatively North Carolina's turning very quickly to fall weather, and she went to over 100 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and she said, we ate outside a lot. I was like, why?
Why do they not have air conditioning?
No, I think it was just more of the atmosphere kind of thing. I don't know.
Oh, good grief!
I know. I was like, no, that sounds terrible. So, but yeah, so single dad. I survived. The kids are still alive. Got them on the bus. And unfortunately, yesterday it was a good morning. Everything worked out, and then get in my car and won't start.
Oh, no.
Dead battery, complete dead, utterly dead battery.
No.
So, but here's the win. Luckily, my neighbor was still at home. Tried jumping it, didn't work. I've got like 4 or 5 auto parts stores in our town. So we just pick one, get a new battery. $200+ later, I'm back on the road. But here's the win. I had a meeting scheduled for 8:35.
There we go.
Made it there with 10 minutes late. Still got it in. Observation done. Bam. Already there.
See,
post-observation meeting done. We got it in.
I didn't know if you were going to say it's the win because you missed the meeting, or it's a win because you made the meeting, implying it was a meeting you wanted/needed to be at.
Yes.
And so good. I'm glad it worked out for you, man.
The $200, not a great thing, but
no.
But long time coming, but it happens. Life happens. So, but very tired. We've done testing all week, benchmark testing all week. So it's just I'm tired. You're tired.
Yeah,
and
it's for reasons that don't matter. I did not get a lot of sleep last night, and I'm present and accounted for. And just to really tell you what last night was like, I've only had time to watch this episode once, and I had to watch it on my phone. So I watched it. I thoroughly
Brent's compromising.
It.
Brent is compromising for situations.
I will rewatch it again on the TV when my wife watches it because she hasn't seen it yet. But it was either watch it on my phone or don't watch it at all. So I went ahead and went with watch it on my phone because the show and our show, and 2, I didn't want to get spoiled on anything, and I am glad I didn't.
Yeah, it did not take too long on Twitter for that to start blowing up at that point. However, I will applaud when people were putting spoilers out. They did try to like space it very much so that way you had to open the show more. So at least people were somewhat being respectful.
Good.
Not saying everyone, but David in the chat. Good evening, you beautiful witches. Yes.
Yes, witches with a W.
But all right, well, let us get through the network plug so we can talk about episode 5 of Agatha All Along. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. For one more time I can say this, we have 7 shows that cover the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GWAPod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. We've got our $1 tiers, our tip jar. Say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows. I want to call out our newest patron, Stephen Barnes. We want to thank you for becoming a patron, and definitely, want to give Star Wars Alliance the props for this one because biggest reason he's a patron is they reviewed his book on their show. He's the author of Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss. So make sure you give Star Wars Alliance a listen to talk about that. But it's great to have you aboard the Geek Ultimate Alliance train.
And that episode is where Clay has his hot take on Yoda, right? I don't want to go into it. We'll tease people, but
I think he's had that hot take on Yoda for a long time. I think maybe he goes into a lot of depth with it, but
okay, is that it? Okay.
So
I haven't listened to that one yet, so I got a glimpse of that part, but I need to actually listen to the episode.
Yeah, so
I admit it.
But yeah, thank you, Stephen, for joining the Geek Ultimate Alliance Patreon. But we have a lot of back content out there. We've got on Marvel Alliance side, we have the We Can Watch This All Day, our Marvel Alliance Infinity Saga rewatch, 24 episodes covering the Infinity Saga. And then we are getting ready to come to the end of our current show, Tales from the House of X, where we're watching our favorite movies from the Fox era of X-Men. We've covered Deadpool, Deadpool 2, The Wolverine, Logan, X-Men, and X2. And that all those have already dropped and are in the feeds. And Brent and I are getting ready to record next Monday, X-Men First Class.
Yes. And I will tell you, I have completed my homework for that one.
As always, my homework will be completed on coming Saturday.
And I, it was, we'll save it for that. But I that's one I was eager to revisit. It had been a long time. And
well, I can't even remember the last time.
We'll see if it holds up for me. We'll tell you that.
Stay tuned, patrons. So, but if you're not a member, but we also have the DC Alliance guys doing their DC film through the years. We've got Joe pulling double duty with his walk through the multiverse minutes. He's got the Disney Dies, the 1st and the 15th, covering in chronological order all animated theatrical releases from Disney, but at the same time, he is currently in his 30 plus days of Halloween, where he's looking at every kind of Halloween movie that he's watching. As some of the ones he's going over right now, he's going to be covering the entire Friday the 13th saga. So he's gotten to part 4, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is part 4. He's doing the Conjuring the Conjuring universe of films right now. A couple of other ones sprinkled in there, so check that out. We've a lot of back content. We want to thank our patrons. We can't do this without your support. Go to www.patreon.com/GUA Network so you can get all that lovely content, become a member. But if you can't join us on Patreon, totally understand. If you want to take 30 to 90 seconds and rate and review the Marvel Alliance solo feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for our omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. All these lovely omnis, collected edition, epic collections are there for you. Use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. Lets them know you're a listener, and we want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right, so just want to give one final plug at this point for World's Finest True Believers. Episode 100 dropped this past Sunday. As I talked about last week, it is the final episode of World's Finest True Believers. I am bringing that show to a close, my very first podcast. It is near to dear to my heart. It was not an easy decision, but I'd like to say I went out with a bang with our friend Scott McClellan taking the hosting chair and I getting to talk about one of my all-time favorite crossovers, a crossover to end all crossovers, JLA Avengers. So we break all that down, but also Scott and I spend some time. We talked about reminiscing about my time on the show and had a lot of fun at the end, and want to thank a number of people, including yourself, Brent, for giving your kind of final thoughts on World's Finest True Believers. It was a heck of a ride, but as I said, I'm still here on Marvel Alliance. It just was the time to bring World's Finest to a close.
We'd talked about this for a little while, a couple different times before you made that final decision. And one, you could not have picked a better final book to cover. JLA Avengers or Avengers JLA, depending on what issue you're looking at. You could not have picked a better book for that. Scott did a great job coming in and, pinch hitting as the host. Great episode. Congratulations on 100. And, you got to do what you got to do. And I respect the decision to end the show when you need to. Like, it doesn't mean you didn't love doing it.
Yeah.
But there is a point where it just doesn't fit in right now. And if that's where you're at, nothing but respect for the choice there.
Yeah, and after I recorded, put it out there, I said I'm still comfortable with the decision. I'd rather go out on my terms than being forced out. So
100%.
Absolutely. So check that out if you haven't. And again, thank you all listeners who have been there either since the beginning, since I've joined the GUA, or even just this episode. You got a lot of content to look at there at that point. So Creator Spotlight's everything. It gave me an opportunity. And when I tweeted it out, this show has literally changed my life for all the good. And I truly mean that. But thank you all. And let us get into Agatha All Along, Episode 5, Darkest Power, Wake Thy Power. So very appropriate title. As we lead to the end of the episode. But there's a lot of good stuff to talk about with this episode. It is the shortest episode by a lot. However, I was worried that saying 25 minutes right before the credits, but they did a lot in these 25 minutes.
I'll take the blame for putting it in the universe, hoping this episode would be a short one because that just fit my time at that moment. And I kind of chuckled when I actually saw the runtime of it. I was like, well, I asked for it. Shortest episode. I talked briefly with a coworker who's never been on the show, doesn't listen to anything like that. But he watches, and we both agreed, obviously, objectively, the shortest episode of the season or of the series, but we both felt like it was the best one so far. Now that said, even though I think it was the best one so far, it went fast, and it really could have, it really could have used even 5 more minutes to flesh a few things out and go a little bit deeper here or there, maybe make things a little more clear on why something was happening. Now, it could be a case of by the time we get to the end of episode 9, we will look back on this episode and say, no, I'm glad they didn't explain any further this because it worked better when they explained it then or something like that. But there's a couple things. I have one hypothesis, I'll say, one question about it. I can't call it a theory, though. I guess I won't call it a theory, though some might, about the episode regarding this week's trial. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the non-spoiler part. There's another house. They got to come up with something else.
Well, there's a couple more witches that they have to trial.
I'm sure there's 2 more houses. But it feels like the 3 little pigs, going to house to house to house. But this was my favorite one. And so the trials are getting shorter. Like, they're getting through them faster. But it worked, like, just several sequences in this episode. I was like, that was really cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far for me as saying it's favorite episode. It's definitely not the bottom by a long shot. It's not there. I'm not sure where I want to put it, but I know it's not my favorite. It's not my bottom right now. So it's kind of like hanging out there in the middle. Could be lean towards middle, probably more middle high at this point. But with all that considered, I agree. It went fast. There were probably the other thing I agree with. It could have used maybe a little more time, but I don't feel anything. I didn't feel this was a filler episode necessarily. It did, like, sometimes those short episodes can kind of feel like filler. They don't know what to do with it, so they just made a cutoff point and saying, okay, we're going to cut it off here. They did a lot, and even how the episode ends being the big quote unquote impactful moment, I think there's a lot of stuff that I even have questions about, and things of characters going in very interesting directions. I think there's definitely a lot of misdirects going on in this episode alone.
There are, and that plays into what I think about the trial and my little theory about it. But we'll get there. I don't know. That's it. Should we go over the spoiler?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
I almost said something. I'm like, we got to get over the wall.
All right, so we're going to officially jump over the wall, but first we're going to take our ad break. So if you have not seen episode 5 of Agatha All Along, stop watch, come back and edit, come back and listen. If not, we're getting ready to jump spoilers after this ad break. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud, so give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent. So spoiler wall is open. And so, the episode opens on a very eerie note. The Salem 7 have returned. We haven't seen them since episode 2. And they basically descend on the Witch's Road. Now, what I found it interesting is like they all take on the form of an animal. But now when they transform back into their human form, they're all still acting like the animals they were, like how they move, how they act, how they go. They're whispering Agatha's name, crawling through the leaf-covered road. And when they come across an item, which is an obsidian rock, that's when they start really picking up on the scent. And so that was kind of like the quote-unquote door they left open.
Absolutely. They said we left the door open when they brought Rio in. The previously on this week, they actually showed a scene from WandaVision.
They did.
When it's the very beginning of episode 8 of WandaVision, when Agatha's mother and their coven tried to kill Agatha at the stake, and she discovered she can absorb their power and turn it on all of them and kill them. And with the Salem 7 coming, we would go on to have, through a little bit of an exposition dump, but an interesting one. The Salem 7 are the children of Agatha's original coven that she killed. And Agatha says something to the effect of, lesson learned, don't have mercy, it doesn't pay to show mercy, something along those lines. Like, I don't know if that's the lesson you were supposed to learn from this, but...
that's the lesson she learned, saying kill them all.
Kill them all. That's what she learned for sure.
God sort them out. As one of the witches brings it to their nose, it cuts to Lilia, who's asleep on the ground, and then she wakes up and has a vision of the 7 coming to the trail, and she says, they're coming, we have to go. And they bring open like you said, like something's been left open in like the summoning spell left the quote-unquote theoretical door open, Now, this is a very common horror trope where if you don't close the door after the spell or talking to the dead or something to that effect, something is going to slip through. That is a very, very, very common trope in horror movies.
Sure.
So yeah, we finally get that explanation of who they are, as you said. Like they're the children of the dead witches from the Salem witch trials, or from that scene in WandaVision. So it's too late to run, though. It's too late to run. They try, but they don't get too far. And they're surrounding them. And so they'll need a practical means of escape. Now, there's a lot of them, most of them still don't have their full powers yet outside of Alice, I believe. I think she's the only one who has her full powers back.
Seems like it, yeah.
So,
well, I don't know. Jen might be considered to have her powers back.
Well, she's bound still. She's bound still.
Good point.
But remember, Teen brought up the idea that you can still be a witch, but if you're willing to do the work, you can do the labor magic versus the actual, light show magic.
It's like the craft part of witchcraft.
Exactly. So that's where Teen suggests brooms. Now, the Coven at first really brushes that off because they say, like, no, we don't do that because your whole society has turned this into a Halloween kind of nonsense. And they also don't give into the whole, women are supposed to be the cleaners in that sense, and it brings up that whole idea. So, but they're not left with a few options, so they hex a few roots from the tree and start an incantation in a hurry as the 7 is literally on their tail, jumping on the brooms, and they take flight. And the only way to survive will be to get off the road, so they take to the air. Now, again, like I said, this all came about, like, Agatha can still do intensive spells, just not the magic kind.
Right. She doesn't, like you said, she doesn't have the light show. But this wasn't a light show. This was an incantation. And I really enjoyed this sequence. One, they basically had to enchant the brooms and then give them to a partner. And then two, just the visuals of them flying through the air. And as they struggled, as the road was pulling them back down, and Rio just cackling.
Yeah,
And
Rio seems to be the only
enjoyed
one
this.
really having a good time with this.
Yeah, which I mean, if she's happy, there is something wrong. Like something's afoot for sure.
I will propose this though, and it is left to interpretation. But upon like kind of rewatching the scene again, it does look like the road is pulling them back in. I don't think it was the road necessarily.
Okay.
I think it was one of the Salem Seven, who is the only member of the Salem Seven that is named during the credits. Vertigo.
Okay,
It's
that's
the what
possible.
it's the one with the bugs coming out of their mouth and everything
Hmm.
like that. Like right when that happens, you see it. That's when they start going down, and the world literally spins. And what does Vertigo do? Vertigo is where you kind of lose balance and everything like that.
I could see that. I could see that.
So that's kind of like what I was thinking necessary. Because at first I was like, oh, it's not going to let them go too far. They have to travel the road. But when they kind of made that odd cut to that particular Salem 7 witch, it just seemed a little too. I think there's a reason behind it. So,
You might be onto something there for sure.
but so they literally then run to a cabin in the woods.
Yep, yep.
And besides being a name of a movie that's been out there, this show, as we knew, was going to be making a lot of tips of the hats, particularly this episode, a lot of tips of the hats and homages to horror movies, horror tropes. In this case, that cabin in the woods is basically, you kind of get that idea with Evil Dead 2. And so with the witches, with the Salem 7 on their tail, they go in there and they go into the cabin and they get another wardrobe change. And what are they all dressed as?
Like a bunch of 80s workout people or something. I don't know what was going
Yeah,
on.
definitely just like in 80s inspired, like where you would see people would be dressed like in these movies and things like that. That really hamming up. Now, here's the thing, and we'll address it now, but we'll dive into it there. Teen is literally wearing an 80s version of who he is in the comics.
It sure looks that way to me too.
The
Yeah,
headband,
agree.
the color scheme, that's
Kind of reminded of the Luke Cage episode where
yes.
he gets the a similar like the cheesy comic book look, and they nod to it for a few seconds. Now, and this teen had it much longer, but that's what it kind of reminds me of.
Brock in the chat saying it looked like an 80s slumber party. Oh, absolutely. Fully agree with that. So they luckily it doesn't seem to be the Salem 7 can't get in there. And so they've now come to the conclusion that this is their next trial and they need to be on the way before the 7 figure out how to get in there. And Rio's the one who puts two and two together saying this is Agatha's trial. Given one, the blood moon outside, which indicates that the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest, and the best person to commune with the dead is someone who's put so many in their grave, as Rio said. And she's made this comment before, and others have made the comment before about Agatha. Here's the other telltale sign that this is Agatha's trial. The road leading up to the house, everything around it is in purple.
The purple, I think, is a sign, but this is also where I kind of question it. I almost wondered if this was more Rio's trial. And the reason I wondered that is not because of the purple, and you would think Rio would have the green because she's supposed to be the Green Witch. But what was the actual objective? Like what they were actually supposed to do for this trial was punish Agatha. So unless the trial was for Agatha to punish herself, I don't see how it's a trial for Agatha when it comes down to everybody else is supposed to punish her. Rio has shown, and I think she shows again in this episode, she actually, knife to the throat, literally aside from the first episode, does care for Agatha. She does have a love for her. And it would punish Rio, I think, to have to hurt Agatha.
Yeah, it's also interesting because I have a few things where I think Rio kind of goes back and forth in this episode, like very kind of odd in my opinion. But we'll get there in just a few minutes. So, Lilia also reveals at this point that her powers were never about communing with the dead. She said that was all part of the con. What she can do is read people's minds and being able to read the future flow of time. So
I was going to have this as a fact or fiction
okay.
in a future time, but I'm just going to say it here with that line. I think that when we have seen Lilia kind of go all kooky, as they put it, I believe it was last week, I think she was actually telling the future effectively. She was saying lines from the future, because the first time we saw her do it was in that first house, the 1st trial, and she said, "We have to save Agatha." Well, Agatha was in no more danger than anyone else at that point. I
Fair.
think at some point we are going to hear her repeat that line.
Well, with that, she did give a warning in the last episode too to Alice. She's told her, "Don't do it."
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there was never a thing that she did in that episode that connected that. It's what's going to happen later on in this episode.
Happens in this one. Yep.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this since that episode, since that first trial. I think she's a precog basically, and she pretty much confirmed that tonight or yesterday.
Yeah, so Justin the teen finds a Ouija board, and at that point, the Ouija board kind of interestingly falls down. You know, imagine that. And all their watches start beeping, and then it starts ticking down. They have 30 minutes to figure this out. So another escape room. So after the teen read the rules on the board, which is interesting, I'm not going to go over those rules, but it was kind of humorous hearing him read all those, because I knew especially that last one was going to be important. Mm-hmm. You got to say goodbye. So they start using the board, and the quote unquote spirit spells Mrs. Hart. And before they've even had time to process with it, Agatha becomes possessed by Mrs. Hart. But wait, she's not actually possessed. She's just being typical Agatha, distracting everyone with it from their own fears and vulnerability. And the group calls her out of it, and she sits down to try again. And this time, she needs to take things seriously. Did you think? Because I mean, they even got the voice changed too.
See, I really didn't think they got the voice changed that much. Like,
well, I mean, but she changed it enough to make you think.
I initially thought it at first. I took it at face value, and then the more she kept going, the more I thought, this isn't her. This isn't Mrs. Hart. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't necessarily come to the conclusion Agatha was faking it, but I didn't think it was Hart.
Yeah, but do you think like this is this the only other time we're going to see Mrs. Hart, or do you think that there's still more chance of Mrs. Hart coming back?
I think there's more chances, especially because we didn't technically see her. I think there's more chances.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see what exactly happens. So this time she's taking it more seriously. So who are they really talking to? And it spells death. And what do they want? Punish. Who? Agatha. So scared, the women start pulling their hands off the board. It's too late. Lights begin to flicker, and papers are flying everywhere. The board shoots off the table. Things start to settle, and Jen yells, "Punish Agatha." Here's a question I have. Could Rio be manipulating the group to turn against Agatha and kill her? Because she's also playing them at this time, too. It felt like she was also pushing them to this idea of punishing Agatha.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be. I would never question, is Rio up to something? I wouldn't question that at all. My thing was, one of the rules was you can't take your hands off the board.
And they did.
Or the spirits take off or leave or whatever. They all ended up doing it, and they didn't really do anything directly tied to that. I was a little surprised.
Yeah, a little bit of a hole, if you were, or we're misunderstanding what they can and can't do.
It's like they set up and then broke their own rule.
Yeah. Well, rules were made to be broken.
Sometimes.
Well, let me ask you, did you ever play the Ouija board at all in your youth?
I have not.
I did. It doesn't stick out of my mind as a staple, though.
Yeah. I don't even know. I've never even talked to anyone about playing it before. I've seen it on like movies and TV, and that's it.
Yeah. So she thinks that's the only way to get past the trial, Jen and the rest of the witches. So Agatha tries to convince them otherwise, but the coven starts to agree, and maybe after everything she's done, Agatha deserves to be punished. Tina's the only one going to defend her. Unfortunately, as Jen says, familiars don't get to vote. So when they kept on saying punish her, it almost felt like we're going to kill Agatha. I was like, they're really harping on this punishment, but I think it almost said like, I think they're wanting to kill Agatha.
That's what I wanted to know what punished meant. Was it like a prison yard beatdown? Like, were they just gonna, punch her and kick her repeatedly? Were they gonna? I mean, they can't do her spells on her because she would just take those. She would just absorb that power. Brock, I thought Frank Castle was gonna show up.
You can't protect your women, Agatha.
That'd be something.
Or you can't protect your sons, Agatha.
That would be. Oh, could you just imagine Frank Castle showing up on the road? That'd be great. But I'm like,
I want that episode.
What did punish mean? Like, kill is the only conclusion I can come to, but I would think it ultimately means kill like a human, like without witchcraft, because you don't want to give her power.
Yeah, I don't know. That one kind of like thing. I'm not sure if they really are meaning punish. I think there's yeah. So lights go out. Agatha hides from the coven, and as they're circling the cabin looking for her, they hear heavy breathing. And Teen looks up to discover a decrepit-looking Agatha perched on the ceiling, her skin grayed and cracked. The hair is sticking out everywhere. She's got this kind of feral attitude about her, and she jumps down on the ground, and her limbs start cracking and turning unnatural rays. She's possessed for real this time. Mm-hmm. The crab walking backwards at this point. Now, this is a perfect homage to Linda Blair's character Reagan in The Exorcist. However, everyone thinks like this is actually in Exorcist. It is not. I'm a huge fan of that movie. My father actually, interestingly enough, he loved that movie so much that he had his brothers and sisters recreate this on a home movie, and it was kind of a humorous thing. They got really dark on that one. But this scene was actually not in the theatrical cut. It was actually left on the cutting room floor. It's only been reintroduced. But when everyone thinks The Exorcist, they think, oh, it's this scene. The scene was never actually in the theatrical cut.
Didn't know that. I assumed. I've never seen the movie. I assumed It was part of it, though.
Yeah, but it is the homage to it. So and Teen is really scared because he does not know what to make of this.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If I see someone crab walking backwards and spitting blood everywhere, yeah, I'd be creeped out too. So she goes after Jen, strangling her against her will, and Lilia turns the lights on, making her disappear. Just then, a ghost appears, and who is this ghost, Brent?
It's Agatha's mom, just a little family reunion.
Not a good one.
No, not. They haven't watched enough Fast and Furious.
Yeah. The ghosts usually show up because they have unfinished business. So the coven asks Ivanora what she needs, and she tells them they must finish the Witch's Road without Agatha. The best and really only way to punish her. She wants the group to leave Agatha in the cabin with her. And Rio this is where, again, Rio flips again. Rio refuses. She's now standing up for her. And teary-eyed Agatha asks her mother, why did you hate me so? Now Rio says, like, no, we're not doing this. I know what her mother did to her. It forced her to become in this. She's stuck in this weird area of like hating Agatha but loving her at the same time.
She's not gonna allow someone else to hurt her. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Her mother answers Agatha saying, you were born evil. I ought to have killed you the moment you left my body.
Ooh, harsh.
And
harsh.
Nobody knows what to say to that. Now, this is an interesting idea. Now, there's what I'm going to refer to is someone else's mother in the comics who actually did follow through on this attempt. Thanos' mother in the comics did actually try to stab him when literally she had just given birth to him, when she laid eyes on him, sensing that he was going to dedicate his existence to death itself. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily Mother of the Year.
No, not Mother of the Year, but probably okay. She's the worst.
Well, it's definitely not up there. So Jen insists they need to leave the cabin and leave Agatha behind, but Agatha begins pleading with the coven to save her. That's when Ivanora possesses her again, moving to chase the other witches out the cabin. But Alice has other ideas. She steps in front of him, summons her powers, and directing them towards Agatha. And what is she able to do?
Well, when Alice goes to knock the ghost out, Agatha absorbs the power from Alice herself. So Alice was trying to save Agatha,
and she was able to drive the ghost out.
Yep, mission accomplished. Let's go. But Agatha doesn't let her go.
Now, here's my question to you, Brent, because she says, as a result, we'll skip ahead a little bit, but we'll come back to this. Teen runs over to the Ouija board to demand which spirit is with him now. it spells out Nicholas Scratch, Agatha's son. So just as time is running out on the clock, Agatha then stops siphoning the powers that she hears her young son pleading, "Mom, stop." Door opens. They pass the trial. It's too late for Alice. She says, Agatha says she couldn't, like, she didn't mean to do that. Do you believe that Agatha is telling the truth, that she didn't have full control of it and it just happened, or is she trying to pull the wool over their faces again?
Side note, the fact it was Nicholas Scratch's name that they had to call out there at the end, that does push it back in the direction of Agatha's trial itself. I just want to get that out there. But to answer your question, was Agatha tricking them? Did she do it on purpose to absorb all the power she could, or did she try to let go, and was she incapable? Tough question that I've thought about a lot. I lean towards she did it on purpose. Maybe there's a part of her that didn't want to do it, but an awful large part of her wanted to, because, like back in episode 2, she went through all that trouble to recruit the coven, and just immediately she wanted them to, one, fail, and two, she tried to piss them off enough that they would attack her so she could do the same thing she did to her original coven. Yes, they've been through some stuff, but Agatha doesn't strike me as the type of person to attach to someone so quickly. And other than Teen and maybe Rio, she hasn't shown any interest in these other characters.
Yeah, and it's the other flip side of this, I say, because relating it back to how in WandaVision she kind of brought up the point that she can't forcibly take the witch's energy. They have to use their powers on her. Mm-hmm. But it's also to the effect of she's kind of saying that there may be a part of her that wants this, but it's almost like a natural innate ability. If someone fires on her, her body ends up starting to absorb it, and she may not have control at some point if it just goes on for too long.
Could be almost like a rogue situation of the X-Men where, she touches someone's skin, and at first she can let go, but if it goes too much, she kind of loses the ability to.
Mr. Hines in chat singing "It's Wanda All Along," and David saying, "Not on purpose, but didn't feel enough for her to stop."
And it's too bad. I liked Alice. She was cool.
Yeah. Now, there is a chance for Alice to come back because all of her energy is now within Agatha. So if she has a change of heart, she could possibly, pun intended, she could possibly return Alice's temporal aura energies to her body and bring her back to life. Do you think there's a chance of that?
I mean, there's, of course, a chance of it, but as far as I could tell, the body was left in the house. Mm-hmm. And we certainly didn't see the body on the road outside of the house.
Yeah.
And with where our characters are now, especially Agatha, they're not exactly like able to just easily walk back to the house to retrieve her body. So while I do think it's possible, I don't think it's probable.
Yeah, so everyone now, including Teen, is anti-Agatha. Teen pleads with Jenda and Lilia to save her, but they tell her it is too late. So they leave the cabin where Agatha summons magic, secretly realizing she has her powers back. Teen then confronts her, and Agatha insists that she couldn't control herself, but Teen does not believe her. Meanwhile, Jen and Lilia have resigned to the fact that this was a power grab for all of them, and they can't exactly be mad that Agatha took the opportunity to get the magic back. So basically what they're saying is they also had ulterior motives as well, going on the witch's road.
Yeah, like Jen flat out says she would do it too.
Yeah, so that's what it means to be a witch, killing people to serve your own agenda, Teen asks, insisting not for me. And that's when Agatha gets this really creepy smirk on her face, gets really close in Teen's face and said, "Are you sure? You're so much like your mother."
Yeah.
And that's our first saying, well, at least we finally confirmed what we all were figuring this entire time.
And they kind of spell it out for you even more later, but it's interesting because last week that Rio had to tell her he's not your son. He's not Nicholas Scratch. And
well, now, even going back, do you think we're going to see Nicholas Scratch at all in this series?
I do. I do. It might be as a baby, maybe in a flashback, might be next
maybe
week.
A ghost.
But I one way or the other, I do think we will see him.
Yeah, so it looks like Agatha's figured out who Teen is, or at least she thinks she has. Agatha's words really upset Teen, he starts using his hands in a way, and his black magic begins crackling from his fingertips, lightning. Jen and Lilia, whose eyes then turn blue, seemingly possessed by Teen, grab Agatha and throw her off the road, letting her sink into the mud that nearly took Mrs. Hart at the beginning of the road. He then sends Lilia and Jen flying off the road as well, sinking into the ground. Where is Rio?
Where's Rio? How did he get this power?
Uh-huh. So
Has he been hiding it this whole time?
hold that thought. Hold that thought. I've got some other ideas with that. So they're all on the ground. They're sinking down. Teen is now donning a crown that looks very much like the Scarlet Witch, except, a blue crown. And we know now his real identity. This is Billy Kaplan, a.k.a. Billy Maximoff, a.k.a. Wiccan.
Yeah, and technically they don't tell you his name is Billy.
Nope.
But you know what they do when he starts putting on the crown? They play a song by Billie Eilish.
Yes,
I had not made the Billy connection there at first. I'll admit it. I saw that later, but I was like, that's clever. They play a Billie Eilish song there.
Now again, here are the other hints. Like the blue magic he's displaying was the same. He was displaying blue color magic in WandaVision as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He uses very similar hand motions like Wanda does when summoning her abilities.
I got when Elizabeth Olsen first joined the MCU, I don't remember who it was, but they actually had people like help her develop, like a choreographer help her develop those hand motions, and I wondered if they got those people to work with him as well.
Yeah. Now, this may not have been Billy acting on his own, but maybe instead the will of Wanda acting. Instead, a likely side effect of the sigil placed on him on how he is just blankly staring. Like there is no life in that idea. Like it's not even satisfaction, like a Rio satisfaction. Like he is just, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I don't find it hard to believe that Wanda would have put a sigil on him to protect him from Agatha, and it's not much of a leap to believe, especially with where we last saw Wanda in Multiverse of Madness, that she would have tried to kill Agatha.
Yeah. So the sigil was supposed to also suppress the powers. Now remember, the sigil only exists until,
It's
the
no
person
longer
who
needed.
it's no longer needed, or the person who put it is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's got his powers. We'll have to see exactly if he's going to have that little M over his mouth again if he starts saying certain things. Because he didn't say anything, he just did. And even in the comics, Billy's powers, Wiccan's powers, are lightning based. Now, unlike Wanda, who just doesn't have to do anything, she just does the spells at that point. In the comics, he has to do incantations. He has to say the spells.
And usually it's saying something over and over and over again, the same line, like over and over. Like if he wants to teleport to across the street, he'd say, I want to be across the street. I want to be across the street. I want to be across the street. He'd say it a whole bunch of times as he's learning his magic. Clearly, he didn't have to do any of that here.
So Sedna in the chat saying, my theory is that he put a sigil on himself. And when Agatha figured out who he was, it was no longer needed, and he remembered himself and got his powers. That's an interesting idea.
It is. And, he probably remembered himself the whole time, probably. But even he wouldn't, as Agatha told us, he wouldn't remember casting the sigil on himself.
Yeah.
She did flat out say, I don't know if I did it, because it works on everybody.
Yep, it does. So the last question I have for this episode is, who is this Billy and how is he alive now? Because remember, as we understood at the end of WandaVision, those twins, just like in the comics, were a creation of the Hex at that point that Wanda created. Like she created these children. And we saw in Multiverse of Madness, we found a version of Wanda that those kids were alive. And so even in the comics, it gets very messy in the sense of Mephisto's involved, this, that, and the other. And so where we leave off very simply, and this is prior to, and we'll get to it eventually in Young Avengers, not this issue, but we will get to it, that the essence and the spirit of both the twins, Wanda, end up inhabiting two other kids. Right. That's why I say Billy Kaplan, because he was raised by the Kaplans at that point and only later discovered of his true origins of being the spirit of Billy Maximoff.
Correct. It is, comic books are soap operas, and that is certainly one of them. But where did this body for Billy come from? I presume that maybe they did something similar, that she took when she dropped the hex, she somehow within her powers, within herself, stored the essence of Billy and Tommy at that point, and has infused that into a different kid. That is my best guess.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to kind of see the ramifications of this, because now, like, pretty much it's only Billy on the road now. I don't know if he thinks he's killed them. Are we gonna get, like, meanwhile in the mud?
I do think we're going to get that. I think we're going to see what happens when you go through the mud. And at the same time, we have to ask, where's Rio? So
Yeah, we'll
good episode. Good episode.
Yeah, this was not a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination. This is one that I think does move the story along. But do you think that are we going to get another trial next week?
I don't actually. I think we're gonna get a break from the go to the house and have a trial. They'll get back to it the following episode, but this was what, 5, so we still have 4 to go.
Yeah.
I think they could skip one now, and what I suspect is some exposition about Billy. Get a little bit of Billy's background. Figure out how that's funny. How Agatha and the other two get out from where they are, and we find out what Rio happens. There is a lot they could do without going into the trial at all. And I'm going to go ahead and say, hopefully the episode's a little bit longer next week.
Yeah, I would hope. It's just interesting that we're still playing this game with these Disney Plus shows. I don't understand. I'm okay within, like, if you're saying this is supposed to be a 45-minute to an hour show, why can, I know our brothers over at Geekverse talked about it, is like, why can a show like The Penguin can go pretty much week to week with hour-long episodes without really much difference between maybe a give or take 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, and that is a thing with streaming in general. It's all over the place. The length of episodes go all over. Ted Lasso, a show both near and dear to our hearts, has some episodes that are sub 30 minutes and some that are more like 50. Like, it's just, streaming is all over the place, and
because they don't have to compete against, like, oh, you have to get to this time because another show's coming up.
They don't have to fit a time slot. And frankly, if they truly believe that this week's episode was the optimal amount of time, fine. I disagree. I think, even though I loved the episode, I think it could have used a few more minutes. I've had that problem with the What If episodes, especially in season 1, where I really felt like they all needed 2 or 3 more minutes to go through. I just think that there is a consistent criticism of the Marvel television shows on Disney Plus, and it does kind of feel like that's not being addressed. And not saying that they should just say, well, the fans want it, so we have to do it, but every single show has pretty much, I think, other than both WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, had these complaints of episodes being too short. And it is a little jarring to have like a 45-minute episode and then a 25-minute episode and be back up to 40 minutes the next week. But
yeah,
the age of streaming, what are you going to do?
Yeah, before we close out, Sedna says, I could see this episode be better with a rewatch and knowing all the pieces. Yeah, I think it's not, the show right now is not as big of a mystery box show as WandaVision was. I mean, that was like every single week, jokes aside of Mephisto confirmed, but there was that. But this show does, I'd say that mystery box light on this show, but once we kind of get to it, yeah, I could see this being like, where were the connections? What didn't we notice that we should have before? So
yeah, I think this would be a fun show to binge at the end of it.
Yeah, I could see that. Right now, as I said, I've been not totally saying this is the worst show, because it's really not. But this episode, last couple of episodes have just been, okay, I'm starting to see it. It's right now mid-tier pack. They're doing some interesting things, but I'm with you. I think we need a change in formula for next week and maybe take a break from the trials. We don't need to see another trial.
Yeah. So we'll find out.
Yep, we'll find out. So, all right, we'll find out with episode 6 of Agatha All Along. So we now have crossed the halfway point, and we're going to take our final ad break for the evening. So, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. They could be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent. So, feedback from you put out the Spidey signal. I think we got like 2 or 3 questions this week.
Yeah, there's a couple. First up from Tim Rooney, it says, what's your favorite Marvel movie moment post-Endgame? Marvel movie moment post-Endgame. Goes on to say his is a tie between the speech Doctor Strange gives and to his counterpart about his sister in Multiverse of Madness. Tim likes the way that's reflected in Sam Raimi's own life, actually, with the loss of his brother. And then he also mentions the Dog Days Are Over montage at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He says, the sheer joy and overwhelming emotions is the perfect capper to that group of scoundrels story to me. Could not agree more with that list.
Yeah, those are great choices. So yeah, I've got a few as well. One of mine is the 3 Peters meeting. Either you take on the rooftop where they talk about, Andrew Garfield as Amazing Spider-Man talks about how he lost Gwen, Peter talking about Uncle Ben, or even when they're all in the lab together, when they're before the big bad, like that. All those conversations were so cool, and just having those kind of like, oh, we didn't think we'd actually get to have this moment, and they're talking. It's like only in our heads we could have dreamed what this happened, and it met all my expectations, and I want more.
Yeah, the 3 Peters was definitely top of my list as well. Specifically, that moment at the statue where they're talking before the final fight.
Yes,
just hanging out, talking. So does a web come out of anywhere else, or just your hands? Or Toby telling Andrew, "You're amazing. You are amazing." Right? Just seeing them all.
I want to fight an alien.
Right, I want to fight an alien. I fought a rhino once. It was a guy in a robot suit. The interactions between those 3, like that's. For a movie moment, and to be clear, I truly kept it to the movies. Because otherwise,
I did not.
I mean, I can give you a show, but he said movie, so I did.
He did.
But that has to be top of my list for as far as movie moments.
What's your other movie moment?
Black Panther Lives is another one I had. That moment when Shuri in the Black Panther costume drops down, Atlantis is just decimated Wakanda at that point, and when she drops down and M'Baku basically gives his blessing to her to take over and just yells that the Black Panther lives, that moment is like chills every single time I watch it.
Yeah. I'll do my other movie one, and the rest of mine are shows or special features, just because they do stand out, and it's not knocking the movies. It's just these really were more impactful. Recent Deadpool and Wolverine. It's not even just meeting of the variants at that point, the conversations. I just love that the street fight where we see Wolverine full costume, Deadpool, and they fight all the Deadpools.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wrote down Wolverine's mask.
Yes.
The moment we finally get to see Hugh Jackman put a mask on.
Wide eyes and all.
Just absolutely iconic. Like instantly one of the most iconic scenes.
Chills.
In all
Chills.
of Marvel.
Slap it.
And,
chills.
If they, as much as I wanted to see it in the first movie, if they'd given it to us in the first movie, it wouldn't have hit as hard as it did in Hugh Jackman's, 20th appearance or whatever he's up to at this point.
Yeah, Amara Daniels said the Eternals discussing whether to stop the birth of the Celestial was a great philosophical conversation.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So, what other ones do you have? Because the rest of mine are violating what Mr. Rooney said. But
violating. Really, the only other one I had written down, especially because he just asked for one, was that Guardians Dog Days montage that he has said. Because I went into that movie expecting chaos and carnage and death, and I didn't think every Guardian would die, but I thought 2 or 3 of them were going down, and the fact that they kind of all got their happy endings, it was
in some way, shape, or form,
it was like such a relief that they all survived and did it, and it just you pair it with such a great song like that, and I just think it's a wonderful moment.
Yeah, Florence and the Machines.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the rest of mine are Disney Plus shows. Loki season 2, where Loki just keeps restarting time
Yeah.
and trying to get this right over and over and over, and that's where it was just like, oh my god, he's trying. He literally is becoming trying to be a hero.
Right.
Um, Next one, She-Hulk finale with Kevin.
Certainly memorable moment.
Yeah.
Certainly memorable.
And last one I got is basically special presentation Werewolf by Night. Just
Yeah.
if I had to pick a scene, it was the whole transformation in the fight, just how it was filmed, the black and white. Oh my god,
I really enjoyed that.
Werewolf by Night is probably one of the biggest surprises from post Endgame creations.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you a TV one then.
Yeah.
The moment in She-Hulk where Daredevil is talking to her and we hear the Daredevil theme.
Yep.
Like that, like finally having it. And yes, I know at that point we had already seen Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock in the MCU with Spider-Man No Way Home, but seeing Daredevil like in costume finally, but we hear the theme telling us like yes, like we're it's that Daredevil. Just
And he's a really good lawyer.
he is a really good lawyer, but that moment for me is as soon as we talk TV2, how can it not be on my list?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I actually did rewatch this evening for just from randomly reason the unreleased the leaked Daredevil Born Again trailer from D23.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched it since that weekend. If I were to watch such things, but and I kind of don't want to because at this point I kind of want to forget as much of it as I can for when we get a high quality version because you know that first high quality version will probably be the same thing.
Yeah, which
or
is okay.
mostly the same thing.
We'll still watch it all the same. So what else we got for feedback? Well, first, thank you, Mr. Rooney. That was a really good question.
Let's do Amari's and then there's one in the chat real quick. I guess we can hit real fast. Amari's is with how long the MCU has been going. Is anyone else surprised at the lack of tie-in video games? The first two Spider-Man games based off the Raimi films were pretty good. You think any studio would hop on the MCU bandwagon, or did that Avengers game scare them off?
The thing with tie-in games to movies or TV shows does not have a very positive track record in the video game industry. I'm not saying it's an all like you see more failures than successes, or you see more mediocre ones than outright home runs. I think in the sense of how they're doing this now. I mean, you have as you mentioned, the Spider-Man games. Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't a huge seller, but I think it's become more of a kind of silent one that always creeps up, and people say you should definitely play it. It's not a bad game. It's a very different kind of use of the how the UI works and the team combos. It's an interesting game, but the return on investment for a tie-in game, I can completely understand why they haven't done it. There's too much risk.
Brock mentions the Green Lantern tie-in game that they made to the Green Lantern movie. You know, the 2011 movie, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, we had some fun playing that game, Brock and I. Like, it was a fun game.
Glad you did.
It was very similar to like your Marvel Ultimate Alliance, X-Men Legends. There was a JLA game along those lines. I forgot what it was called. It was one of those type of games, and it's just a fun, easy little button masher. But I'm not necessarily surprised that there's not more, or there isn't really any like direct MCU tie-in games. I mean, I guess there's a couple, but I'm just more surprised there's not more games, period. You would think that that would be such a rich opportunity for content and games in the gaming space to go pull from the comic book storylines, and there really hasn't been. You know, on the Marvel side of things, there was the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which I admit I really didn't play much other than a little bit. I know, David, you loaned me the game. I just didn't get through very far of it. There's the Marvel Avengers game, which was fun if you were playing co-op for a little bit.
You and I and Snell had meetups and did that.
Yeah, and Heinz got on there a little bit too, and that was fun for a little bit. There's the Insomniac Spider-Man games, which I adore,
Same.
but they don't. It feels like the last few years there hasn't been much. The Avengers game flopped. The Guardians game, everyone I've talked to or seen talk about it seemed to love it, but I've heard nothing about them doing anything else with it.
It did not. It disappointed in sales. It was not a good time for it to sell. It was critically acclaimed, but the audience just wasn't there. It's just a bad time for it to come out.
And then we know there's more from Insomniac between whatever they're doing for the next Spider-Man as well as the Wolverine game. So.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So, and we got the Blade game too. So it takes a lot, and especially in the age of like, where's the return on investment? Video games, it's a big threshold to meet in order for it to be definitely a profitable move.
Yeah. So one more question from the chat. Mm-hmm. Not really our show, but he asked us, so let's just throw it in real quick. From Kevin, do we think Warner Brothers and DC are going to make a comeback with James Gunn?
I do. I'm positive on it. I think, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. The success of the DC universe will rest on how well Superman does. I think there's a lot more positive. I think the timeline of how they're already done filming. They have a very long post-production window. There's going to be reshoots. Don't freak out. It's, it is what it is.
Standard
at this point. But I trust that James Gunn is going to bring the DCU, even though this is coming as a Zack Snyder fan and everything like that. I am looking forward to it. I'm very positive on it. I think it's going to be successful, and I think it's going to. DC is going to be. It may not be a home run of a movie, but I think it's going to do enough of a job to say, like, okay, let's give this further a chance beyond Superman.
I feel like, and I guess just to make it clear, like, I am not exactly a member of Zack Snyder's fan club. As a person, he's fine. As his movies, I don't like. Let me be clear.
Which is fine. It's not your tempo.
As a person.
Yeah.
No beef with him as a person. Everything I've ever read about him as a person, great guy. I feel like creatively the DC movies have been mostly in a rut for a while. Not 100%, not entirely. Obviously, Wonder Woman was fantastic. The first Aquaman was fun, but outside the Batman movie, which I thought was friggin' fantastic. Yeah. The last few years, maybe the movies have had some fun moments. Maybe I've even enjoyed them more than not, but they haven't hit with audiences. They haven't. You've got basically flop after flop as far as box office goes.
Yep.
And nobody. And just to be clear, I hated the first Joker movie, so I've not seen the second one.
Yeah, don't ask Brent to do it. He's not doing it.
I'm not doing it. I don't care. I was shocked at how bad the box office was. Yeah. Nobody expected that. But you know what? That's not Joker. They just call it Joker. I had to say it. They just call it Joker. It's not really Joker. But Superman is.
You're not wrong in so many ways now.
I know, but Superman. It's Superman, right? Like, it's the superhero. Yeah, I'm a Marvel guy, but Superman is the superhero. I don't think too many people would argue with me about that. Yeah, and I have so much faith in James Gunn. And I know the love he has for comic book characters and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's going to take ridiculous characters that you've never heard of and make you appreciate them. Like, he's already done it with the Suicide Squad movie. Like, Polka Dot Man, seriously? Like, people liked him after that movie, but, like, nobody ever talked about Polka Dot Man before that movie.
Polka Dot Man.
Like, barely anyone had ever even heard of him, let alone, actually cared about the character. So, yeah, I have a ton of faith in James Gunn. I absolutely do. Him going to DC is a loss for Marvel. Now, I don't know that he would have stayed with Marvel past Volume 3 anyway, but him leaving Marvel is a loss. That's how I feel as a Marvel fan. I'm just thankful he's going to do other comic books and going to, frankly, an area that I feel could use a boost.
Well, to be as a creative in the sense of, I think it was also time for him to leave Marvel. Creatively, I think it was the best move he could have made.
He did 3 movies, plus the holiday special, plus who knows what consulting on whatever consulting as part of Infinity War and Endgame. The man put in some great time and turned out some great product.
He did his time for King and Country.
Absolutely. So, and you know, you got to note, like you mentioned earlier, the Penguin going right now. I am really liking that show.
Absolutely, same
I'm
here.
really, really liking that show. So it's not like everything DC is putting out today is bombing. Like the Penguin's doing really well, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't seen it, if you have Max, check it out. It's good.
So
It's really good.
So this concludes our Marvel Alliance DC talk.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, Travis and Joe.
They appreciate it. The question was asked. We had to answer.
It was asked. It was asked.
For
That's
the
right.
people.
Thank you, Kevin, for the question.
Yes, thank you. So, all right. So, fact or fiction. So let me go over the ones from last week. Number 1 is from Mr. Hines. Mephisto will appear at the end of Agatha all along. 76% said fact, 24% said fiction. I stuck with fiction because it smacks in the face of my fact or fiction. So I said I will stay that it is not going to happen. What say you, Brent?
It's probably not going to happen. It'd be fun though, but you really forced me to pick, and I'll go fiction.
Absolutely. Number 2, the Fantastic Four will be the next Marvel video game franchise announced. 56% said fact, 44% said fiction. What say you?
Will be the next what announced?
Will be the next video game.
That's ironic after Omari's question.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it makes such a great multiplayer game. I'm going to say
It
fact
does.
and will it into the universe.
Number 3, Sony Universe will continue for at least 5 more films. 56% said fact, 44% said fiction.
If Tom Hardy is truly done as Venom, I'm going to say fiction unless there's an asterisk and like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies count. So if they count towards it, then maybe. But otherwise, I'll say fiction.
Yeah. And last one from Anthony. By the end of the season, there will be a reprise of the original Agatha All Along song, but with lyrics fitting the show's storyline.
I hope so. It sounds fun.
I thought it was a cool idea. That
It
was
sounds fun. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna say fact, and just because I think it'd be a good time.
All right. So my turn this week. Came up with a few. None of these. I've got one Agatha one, but it wouldn't. I could hold that one until another time because it's not going to apply until the end. So I might just end up doing that. All right, number 1, Secret Wars will follow what Avengers Endgame's lead and not have an end credit scene.
Fact.
I'm a fact as well.
Yep.
I think they want to not tie them to anything, even though by that point they're going to know where they're going.
And by that point, we will probably know where they're going, but I'm still going to say fact.
Yep. All right. So, Daredevil, our favorite.
Oh boy.
I know. In Daredevil Born Again, we will see at most 2 different suits that Daredevil will wear.
That he will actually wear. So like
He will wear.
like the helmets on the mannequins in the background don't count. At most 2 different. So that means 3 total or 2 total?
2.
I just,
2
okay,
total.
I just want to be
2
clear.
total. Yep.
Fact. At least for the first season.
Yeah. I also say we get 2, changes. Suit changes at that
I
point.
hope one of them is not the like black suit, like the black ninja suit he wears at the beginning of the Daredevil show. Like this.
Yeah,
it's fine, but I'm like, he's got a costume. I want the bloody costume. As Bullseye says in the movie.
Again, I could see it since this is a lot of it's going to be taken from Charles Soule's run. There's a legit black Daredevil costume,
And that's fine. That would count.
referring back to the previous one, Sedna says end credits are overrated and they should just stop them. I wouldn't go all right, stop with them, but it's become kind of meme worthy at this point.
Depends on what they do with them.
Yeah, I don't need throwaway ones.
We don't need the ant playing the drums. I will never let that go.
All right, I could put this one next week, but because next week's right before Venom.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold that one till next. No, I gotta put it out there now.
We
I'm
are
gonna put it
coming
out
up
there
on
now.
that.
Yeah, because it's gonna be your turn next week. So I'm gonna put this one out here. Null and Venom will not interact.
I saw
in the
a
Venom
rumor
last.
saying that.
Yeah, and
And
so
all
I'm
I could think was,
I'm putting it out there as a factor of fiction
I'll
throughout
say
most of
facts
the.
because it's dumb enough Sony would do it. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, throughout the whole movie, Null will be depicted in there, but he and Venom will not physically interact with each other.
I hope it's wrong though, because I don't want that rumor to have been right. Because I'm like, to me, that is the definition of a spoiler. So I'm like, if this scooper is right, I'm like, screw you, man. Don't quit putting that out there.
Yeah.
But regardless, yeah, they're not going to interact. So
Yeah.
I'll go fact.
And the interaction is like, well, what do you mean? It said I could like interact in the sense of like you're not going to see Null and Venom face to face at that point, like
Right.
physically. We're not talking about
the hive
metaphysically
mind.
or anything like that. No, they could have that. That's probably how they're going to get away with it, but they will not be in the same room, in the same area together at that point. Sony is dumb enough to do that, and they're going to do that.
Brock just said Noel's going to end up being a big cloud. This isn't Fox. That's more of
It's
a Fox
Sony.
move.
It's a movie, but it sucks.
Yeah. So we'll find out. And yeah, in just a couple of weeks it comes out. So
Yep. So yeah, I got two ones, but I'm gonna bank those because it makes my job easier. But yeah, one's Agatha, one's about a character.
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, one's about a particular character we might not see continuing on. So.
Fair enough.
But all right, so I'll put those out there on Sunday. Let your voices be heard, and let us get back to Comic Book Club. Brent, Young Avengers issue 3.
Every one of these covers could be a poster. Just every one of them. God, I love this art so much.
Yeah, so talk to me about what your high level thoughts on issue 3 of Young Avengers.
A lot more talking in this one, a lot more conversations. This is your exposition dump to get at least some of the backstory of the Young Avengers. Now, if you've read beyond issue 3 before, you know that some of the characters maybe left some stuff out of the story, right? Like we already, I think I can say this without spoiling anything. We already have alluded that Billy in the comics does more. Right, like he does more, and we talked a little bit about it than what we've seen him do in Young Avengers at this point as his Guardian. But I really enjoy it. I like the way that Tony and Cassie had their little heart to heart, like their little moment. I thought was cool. The only thing that's down to it is Tony says something like, "I already lost your dad. Don't make me lose you too." I'm like, was Ant-Man and Tony Stark ever? Scott Lang and Tony Stark?
I know, yeah.
Close?
That lands like where I missed something. I mean, him and Hank. Yes.
But even if not, it's still he could just be saying that as a let me, offer comfort to this grieving kid who lost her dad.
Yeah. Here's something I wanted to make a comment. I don't think I brought attention to it at the end of 2 weeks ago when we did this. When Cassie goes full giant woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have issues with why are we seeing her underwear?
It's not needed, especially because in that same...
especially her age.
They tell you... At first, she's like, I'm 15. Well, in June. So she's a 14-year-old kid. It's not necessary at all.
That was completely just like... I saw that again. Said, oh, I feel icky. I really, really do. That's I have problems.
Yeah,
Absolute problems with
I'm
that.
with you there.
I'm glad we didn't see anything like that again. And it was about like, let me get you a coat or something to wear. But even talking, we get a little bit, like you said, a little bit of background of what they're claiming as like who they are and what they're doing, their stories at that point. But man, the revelation of who Patriot is, that was their mic drop moment for this this issue.
Yes, the grandson of Isaiah Bradley, the original Captain America, who basically was part of a unit of black soldiers experimented on prior to them using, the real formula on Steve Rogers. And Steve points out that Isaiah, his daughter, was born before he became a super soldier. Well, he's like, and Eli says, yeah, you're right, but I needed a blood transfusion because I was on the wrong side of a fight. And so it's fun that they okay, this makes sense. Perfect comic book stuff. The blood transfusion, it worked for Hulk and She-Hulk. Why wouldn't it work for a couple Captain Americas to pass along the super soldier powers?
Yeah, if you have not read Truth, which is basically the miniseries detailing the origins of Isaiah Bradley, go and read
good.
it.
It's good.
It's a very interesting and a very interesting commentary about what happened to the very first Captain America.
And of course, you get some of that in The Falcon and Winter Soldier, but
Yep.
truth is absolutely recommended.
They do get interrupted by a very deep pull of a Avengers villain, the Growing Man.
Yeah, who just looks.
Most people will be like, "Who?"
Yeah, it's like he shows up and he kind of looks like a Sentinel to me. I've always thought.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he's not.
Especially where he yells out, "Master Mold."
Master World. He's not a Sentinel, but he is just repeating himself over and over. Where's the Master? Where's the Master? Hulkling punched him, and he became a bunch of smaller versions of himself. I loved Billy's line that completely violates Growing Man's continuity. I cracked up at that.
Yeah, and especially like they're looking for the Master, and then Iron Lad reveals saying, "I'm Kang, I am your Master." At that point, and they just all saying, "All right, we found him. Bye."
Yep.
And how about like saying, "All right, fine," Iron Man saying, "Fine, Captain America, fine. If you want to do this, we're gonna put you through train. Go in this training room." I was like, "That's a trap.
Yep.
You're not coming out of there."
It's a trap, and they fall for it. And right after that, the real King shows up.
Yep. Like he says, "You know what they say, gentlemen? Speak of the devil, and the devil he shall appear." Yes, Kang has arrived. We call this the real Kang. It's like, I don't think we've ever seen the real Kang in a while.
Well, that's fair. Yeah. And I mean, technically, the other King is the real King as well. Iron Lad is because he's just earlier in the timeline.
Yep.
You know what I mean. Comic book King, purple and green supervillain King shows up.
Absolutely. So, all right. So let's kind of bring this episode to a close. Brent, volume 232 in the books. Lots of great discussion points tonight. So tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, Brentak Prime on the socials. Most active on Twitter. I lurk a lot on the others, but I'm available. Reach out on whatever your platform is of choice.
Yeah, so you can follow this podcast on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can follow me personally at Chris Balga. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. As always, want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. And what else? You can email the show at marvelalliance@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance. Oh, we already did that. Words are tough already at this late at the point of the night. You can feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, fact or fictions, all the good stuff. DMs are open across the board. Continue to rate, review the Marvel Alliance solo feed, GUA network feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever your podcast of choice may be. Want to thank y'all for watching in the chat. Thank y'all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent, post-credits discussion today. We did this last week, but there were some more rumors coming about there. And what is it, Brent? What are we going to be talking about some more?
Spider-Man 4, of course. But there might be more tomorrow because Tom Holland's teasing an announcement. And maybe it's a play. Maybe it's a play he's working on. Maybe it's a, as Joe said, Uncharted movie. But it could be Spider-Man related. You never know. So, well, we'll see.
Yeah, so I'm with you. Yeah, play. I don't think it's Spider-Man 4. Just, no.
The timing kind of fits if it is Spider-Man related. Get it out there right before Venom comes out, tied to these rumors. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. So
yeah, we'll find out. But yeah, some more Spider-Man details. This is coming from Cosmic Circus. There will be multiple symbiotes in the movie. There's a strong possibility that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are showing back up, and the film is leaning this apparently slightly towards a cosmic storyline rather than street level. I'm sorry. When you have symbiotes, more than one at that point, and they say slightly towards cosmic, no. You keep using this word slightly. I don't think this word means what you think it does.
You go beyond Venom and Carnage, and I feel like you can't claim street at all. You probably can't even claim it with those two. But yeah. You don't have to. I wouldn't say those two alone automatically make it cosmic, but you start having a bunch of them come from space, and Venom saying they found me, they're here, whatever it is in the trailers. You have multiple other multiversal Spider-Man involved. Mm-hmm. This isn't the street level movie that a lot of people wanted, not everybody. No. And I'll be honest, we all know what movie I would rather get, but that doesn't mean I'm not going
There's
to
a
like
spider
this.
in the Hell's Kitchen.
Right. That doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy it. That doesn't mean this could have the potential to be a fantastic movie, right? You know, it just I'm still gonna give them the opportunity to sell me on the movie, and I mean, I sell me on, I'll be there, but to win me over for this decision over the other one. Someday that street level movie that so many of us want will happen. Eventually it'll happen. It's Spider-Man. They're never going to stop making movies with this character. They may switch actors, but they're never going to stop making movies. So eventually we'll get that movie again.
Yeah, I'll say I said it last week. I'm saying it again right now. I do not like right now. It feels this is very shoehorned in, and I don't know and understand why we're pushing. I mean, I get it. It's Sony. They technically control and have enough of a say at the table that they can also push it too. This doesn't seem earned right now yet for Spider-Man to already be going full symbiote in the fourth one. Not the way the last one ended.
Especially if some of the rumors are true that Noel could be involved in this.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
like,
get me started on that.
I mean, shoot, even in the comics, like, yeah, Spider-Man was part of that stuff, but only on the edges. He was never one of the main parts. Like, Noel was a Venom bad guy, not a Spider-Man one. So, I don't know about that.
Yeah, this just it doesn't give me good vibes. Like I said, we're gonna see it. I anticipate it would be good, but like I said, the way we left off No Way Home with him being on his own, going that no longer tied to Stark Tech, people forgetting who he is. He's a very different Spider-Man, and just to go lean hard into symbiotes, of which, okay, technically, if we're to understand it, there's a symbiote out there, but we didn't need to have it in the next movie.
And who knows what they're doing with that. That's something I'm very interested to see what they do in the Venom movie, is what's happening with that symbiote that was supposed to have been left in the MCU Sacred Timeline.
It's going to be like a fart in the wind. It's going
to be in the trailers is in the trailers of the Venom movie.
Yeah, I'm not high up on that. I'm not feeling that right now, but like with everything, I'll give it a shot and give it a chance. But again, we have no idea of Spider-Man. These rumors keep on chopping in, and that's why we're leaving in post-credits right now in the back.
Agreed.
So, but all right, we will see you all next week for, again, our next breakdown of Agatha All Along, Episode 6. You all have a good rest of your week, great weekend, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.